Welcome, everyone. I'm just checking to see, I believe we have a quorum of our commissioners here today, so I will welcome everyone and call to order the February 23rd meeting of the Oregon Parks and Recreation Commission. So welcome all. Thank you for being here. I would like to be saying something like it's all nice to be together in X place, but that's not the world we live in these days. So good to see you all and in two dimensions, and looking forward to a good discussion and meeting today. So I believe we'll start off with introductions for the record, so folks know who is in the room. So I'm Jennifer Allen, Commissioner from District 1 and Chair of the Commission, and I'll just go around my screen and call on people to make it perhaps work a little more smoothly. So Commissioner Berger.
I'm Vicki Berger. I'm from the Salem area.
Commissioner Blasher.
Jonathan Blasher, Congressional District 3 in the Portland area.
Commissioner Doerr.
Doug Doerr, Commissioner from West of the Coast Range.
Commissioner Hill.
Liz Hill from Roseburg area.
Great. Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. Lisa Sumption, the Director of Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Steve Shipsey.
Good morning. I'm Steve Shipsey and I'm counsel to the commission.
And then Katie. If you're there. Or Kaylin.
Good morning, all. Kaylin O'Brien Feeney, Director of the Oregon Office of Outdoor Recreation. I'll be back up on item 3. It's good to be with you.
Great. Thanks. And Denise.
Good morning, Denise Warburton, Executive Assistant to the Director and the Commission.
Great. So if I missed anybody who's on the screen, please sing it out. And we will start moving forward on our commission business. First of all, is there any, we need a motion to approve the minutes from November 16th commission meeting. Do we have a motion for that?
Blasher, move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Are there any changes, additions, or corrections people would like to make to those minutes? Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. The minutes pass. Sorry, and my iPad just shut down. So next we're on to the approval of today's agenda. So are there any changes or readjustments to today's agenda that we should make before we move to approve it? Looking at Lisa for this one. No, Denise. All right.
I think we're good.
All right. Great. So do we have a motion to approve today's agenda?
I move approval.
Second.
Great. Commissioner Doerr. We have a second from Commissioner Berger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So next we have public comment, and I believe we do have public comment. Commissioner Steve Shipsey.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I would recommend that we note on the record that we have 5 of 7 commissioners with us today. We have 1 vacancy and Commissioner Grasty is an excused absence.
Thank you. Thank you for noting that. Great. All right. For public comment, I'm going to turn it to Chris.
Yeah, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, members of the Commission, Chris Hava with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. We do have 1 person here for the general public comment period. So this is for items that are not on your agenda. This is Becky Hope. Becky, you're going to see a message on your screen in a second, inviting you to rejoin as a panelist so that you can speak more freely. Hold on a sec. While Becky is coming back in, this relates to Elijah Bristow State Park. Let's hope she gets back in. There we go. Okay. Becky, you should be able to unmute, and if you choose to turn your camera on, you can, but you certainly don't have to. So you'll need to hit that microphone icon in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. There you go.
There we go. Hi, I'm Becky Hope. I'm a local recreationalist that uses Elijah Bristow, both walking, dog walking, and equestrian. With me, I'm gonna try to tip it here. I've got 3 other folks that represent local equestrian groups and a hiker here. We wanted to bring some concerns to you. First, I want to thank you guys for listening to you. First off, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thanks, Becky, and hello to your company there as well.
Anyway, the next question I have is, how long do we have?
We generally ask our comments here to be 3 minutes or less. So if you'd stick to that, that would be beautiful.
Okay. All right. Well, that shortens it down a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and I do have your slides. So when you're ready for me to show those,
Okay.
just let me know and then make a beeping noise and I'll advance the slides and stuff.
Okay. So go ahead and show the first one.
Sorry, I did add a slide just reminding our commissioners where Elijah Bristow is.
Yeah.
It's a park there southeast of Eugene. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
So yeah, there we go. All right. So what we're wanting you to hear us today is about our concerns about ongoing safety issues at Elijah Bristow. Like I said, we're a conglomeration of recreationalists that are walkers, runners, bikers, dog walkers, and equestrians, basically non-motorized recreationalists at Bristow. We got very concerned last year when what they call a Northwest E-Fest was held. Hopefully we'll have time to show a little video on what that entails. Last year, lots of letters were written, lots of phone calling, lots of comments were made, lots of documentation of run-ins that we had before and after. And, and here we find ourselves with another second scheduling of this Northwest E-Fest. So obviously we weren't listened to, nor were the signs that we asked have been started. We're told that they're being made, but they're not in place a year later after this was done, requested last year. So this year, after the first E-Fest, and some of this is going to happen anyway outside the E-Fest situation, we are having run-ins with e-vehicles, whether they're the skateboards or they're the unicycles or whether they're the e-bikes. I personally have had an elderly person I walk with get almost run over by an e-bike. They come blazing past you. They do not even hesitate. Some reason, because they're already going fast, they have no concerns about slowing down. Certainly not listening to any of the rules of the trail as far as, stopping and getting off the trail, which is what is expected. And actually, some of these bikes are on trails that are for hikers only. Melanie here behind me, this is her horse. She is seeing, this is in October, so this is several months after the July E-Fest that they had last year. And what you can't tell is that this is a what they call a motorized or scooter or skateboard, hoverboard, had come toward her. And by the time she got the phone out, it turned and went the other direction. If you'd show the next slide, I'd appreciate it. Okay, that's a close-up of him going away from her after he had come up. She tried to talk to him. He turned around and took off. Anyway, but this is one of many instances that we have documented. So our other concern is that this event, this use of this park is completely not been ran through any kind of public process. This has been unilaterally decided by the park ranger, and he is doing this without any kind of public input. He's changing the rules of the trail. The park will be closed for 4 days. They say only 3, but the eFest website talks about inviting everybody to come on Thursday and start practicing. So essentially, we'll not have major trails open to us for 4 days while this event is going on. And then this park is also used heavily by disabled riders. If you can show the next picture, please. We are grateful for a ADA ramp that is in desperate need of being rebuilt. It's falling apart, but we have many people that use this park as handicapped or disabled riders or inexperienced riders. They go out there expecting to be safe. And now we've got this incursion of riders that are definitely not a safe environment for even an experienced horse to run into, let alone an inexperienced horse. If you can show the next picture. This is just more of the same. This is another, this lady happens to own one of the local feed stores, and she counts on having a safe ride out there. Anyway, this is just her getting on. Anyway, I think that's the bulk of what I have to say. Do we have time for the video, the 3-1 or not?
We're a bit over 3 minutes. I would say either, Chris, I'll look to you about how long is the video. And then the other thing is we can also, if you provide it to us, we can make sure it's available to the commission after today's meeting, which might be the best approach, because I think you've laid out your issues. I just want to thank you for that. You've laid out the issues really well. Yeah, Chris?
Yep. Yeah, I will send any video link over to the commissioners after the meeting. The technology is sort of hanging on by a thread as it is. So
Okay,
sorry about
yeah.
that. Yep.
Hey,
We will get
a
that.
second. My crew wants to say something.
Yeah, we
Okay.
want to make sure that you realize that some of these e-bikes and the hoverboards actually go 20 to 40 miles an hour. And yeah, and last year in the event, the one that won an average 21 miles an hour on these curvy paths with trees on all sides of them there.
And his maximum speed was 45 miles an hour is what was documented in the E-Festival video, if you watch it.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for adding that. And thank you for the slideshow too, and the video and the pictures. It really helps to see the context.
I just want to say it was my horse that I took the picture of that hoverboard coming towards us. He's over 20 years old, but he put his ears up. He was about ready to spin around and take off. He was so scared. So my safety and his safety were at risk in that situation. So safety is huge. Thank you.
And we wonder if anybody has looked into the liability that is raised by putting on an event like this. People are crashing. They can easily crash into a tree. And I don't know if the parks might be liable for any major injuries.
Yeah, thanks for that. Do we have anyone on any questions from the commission for these folks? Well, I want to, Commissioner Berger.
Madam Chair, before these people leave, I want to express appreciation for them coming and bringing this to us. And I expect that we will this is not the end of the discussion. This isn't on our agenda today, but we will certainly follow up. And when the time is appropriate, very soon, expect to hear from our staff about the issues and some possible solutions to this. We deal a lot, I have to say, with conflicts of use in our parks, as you can well imagine. And the electrification of all these gizmos has caused a lot of problems. So we are not surprised to hear from you. And we are struggling with some of these, but you have specific issues and we will be addressing them, just not probably in this meeting.
Yep, Chair Allen, Commissioner Berger, that's absolutely correct. these kinds of devices are only allowed by special use permit at the park. And your contact with this issue is in passing rules that give discretion to managers to open up trails that meet certain standards to things like electric bikes. But as we see, when you host an event, that creates something of an expectation that outside of the event, there may be allowable kinds of use for these devices out on the trails. Managing that kind of conflict is not just an issue for Elijah Bristow, but for several other parks as well. And I do know that park manager John Mellon was chatting with him this morning about that, is aware of the issues. They're aware of their obligation for signage, and they know that they've got issues there at the park with conflicts that they need to manage too. I don't have specifics. I'll pause here for a second. If Ross, you want to add anything, otherwise we can move on to the next agenda item.
No, you hit it right on the head there, Chris. And just want to let the equestrian group know we appreciate all the volunteer work they've done and all the cooperation in the past. So we are listening. We're going to try to find a way to mitigate this and do a better job. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you. We'll be writing more letters and we actually have a couple of solutions for potential solutions. So we'll be presenting them to John and hopefully he'll pass them on up to you.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today and for bringing up these issues. And we love solutions. So please do share your ideas with us. And thanks also to the staff. I just want to thank the staff for following up on this and for taking it seriously. We all do. So thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Becky.
you, Chris.
All right. Great, thanks. So I think next on our agenda is director's update. So I'll turn it to Lisa, and then I think she will turn it over to Kaylin.
I was going to say, as soon as Kaylin can get back on video, he is up first. There he is.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Allen, members of the commission. For the record, Kaylin O'Brien Feeney, I'm the director of your Office of Outdoor Recreation. And there's two items here today. The first is information, item 3A. And what I shared with you in advance in the public meeting materials is a brief on action the commission took almost 3 years ago. A report, the Governor's Task Force on the Outdoors, chaired by Commissioner Blasher. And to not bury the lead any further, when I sat down to sort of write this update and take stock of where we are on advancing some of those recommendations, I realized that 20 of the 30 recommendations have either happened or are in progress this year. We didn't set a firm implementation timeline of 5 years. That was sort of a metric I had in my head as a best case scenario for advancing this work. But something like 3 years into a 5-year period, we're 2/3 of the way through the work. And so that is not a pat on the back to myself as much as a recognition of the work that has been done by partners. The spirit of this work was very collaborative. If you all remember, we had 33 folks from private industry and public agencies around the state that were gathered to produce recommendations to support economic development in rural and urban areas, to increase outdoor participation, particularly among those who aren't currently participating and youth, and to balance conservation and recreation use. And of course, a lot has happened in the couple of years since this report was created. And so those 30 recommendations might not all be the most important things now, but it's still great to see that our partners and nonprofit groups and other agencies, as well as the legislature and the former governor, all contributed in different ways to helping advance these priorities. And so I don't have a slide deck and presentation because I would have eaten most of your agenda probably if I were to give each of these topics their due. And so instead, just wanted to note that of the priorities for 2023 that are either moving forward now or that I anticipate moving forward. I'll just flag two of those. One is work that we've discussed recently with my rotation in the governor's office ending and rejoining the department. We've realized that there's not only a need, but a pretty achievable project here in the near term to update the resources and information that we have on the website. So I get calls and emails often asking about, what are the permitting requirements here, or what sort of grant program might be a fit here, or is there anyone that can help provide facilitation services? I'm dealing with this sort of issue in my park, and getting some of that out of our collective heads, out of our collective wisdom, and onto a refreshed Office of Outdoor Recreation website, as well as creating kind of a splash page so that folks looking for not only state park passes, but snow park passes and ATV permits, et cetera, can sort of land at that one landing page, and then we can send them to the respective agency or to the other site where they can actually purchase that permit. That's a near-term goal. It was one of the recommendations that this task force came up with, and is on my work plan for this year. And otherwise, I can and am happy either in this meeting or in separate one-on-one conversations with any of you, or in a future presentation, to go into lots of depth on any of these. So I can pause there, and we'll note that one of the other actions that the commission took action on, not only back in April of 2020, but last year as well, was firming up the structure of an advisory council around the Office of Outdoor Recreation, which will lead us into item 3B, where the public appointments to that advisory council have now happened, and we've met twice, and this commission has the duty to appoint a chairperson. So before moving to 3B, I just wanted to pause and see if there are any comment or questions from the brief, or reminders about the work of the task force on the outdoors and its that report's role as sort of a guiding strategic plan for my work, and to the extent possible for the state as a whole as we look to pursue outdoor recreation priorities.
Yeah. Thanks, Kaylin. And I see you, Commissioner Berger. I just want to say it would be fun to spend a lot of time today on all this, because it all looks great. So I would look forward to having a conversation about so many things. I have lots of little stars and arrows on my thing saying, oh, that's cool. So I just want to say it would be I'd love to learn more, but you're right, probably not today, but very good, cool stuff, good progress. Commissioner Berger.
Yes, Kaylin, when I first saw this list, I said, oh, well, a lot of, is this achievable? I am, considering the last 3 years, this is really remarkable how far you've gotten. And congratulations on that. And yeah, you get the low hanging fruit first, and then it gets harder as you go up the hill. I understand that dynamic, but congratulations. This is terrific work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Blasher.
Thanks. Hey, Kaylin, good to see you. Yeah, this is super impressive, the amount of things that you all have achieved in 3 years. So just, kudos to you and to, the work rallying folks. I just pulled up the sort of work plan that we had helped develop, and it was really ambitious, and it's great to see so many things that you've taken on. And I'm reflecting too, and this position that you're holding is new. It's relatively new across the nation as well. And you're one of, a handful of folks. I think there's more of you now in these roles across the country, and sort of building that out. And so felt like in some ways an impossible task of so many different things to take on. And it's just really impressive to see how far this office has come, and just testament to you and your work and your ability to make connections, rally things, find ways to get different resources patched together to get that like administrative capacity support to move things forward. So yeah, and like Jennifer was saying, Chair Allen could spend like hours kind of hearing on all of these different activities and some of the priorities. I guess one question I have is, you mentioned some of the things that were set out as potentially priorities in this work plan shifted a little bit. I'm curious if you want to, just highlight maybe one or two things you think like, here are some of our, that were the most recent priorities, or something else that you all are really looking forward to that you're highlighting. I appreciate sharing about the website update. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know we talked about that. So yeah, any just like key learnings, highlights that you want to share that maybe didn't show up in the report because there's so much to cover. So, or challenges too that we should be aware of, this commission be aware of, that we can potentially help get out ahead of, that you see coming down the road that we might need as a commission to help provide support. So
sure. Well, thank you. Thanks also for the comment and your work in particular on this task force, and sort of for taking the risk and believing in it and supporting it. It also, we had the good fortune in some ways of picking priorities that were congruent with where the state as a whole was headed. And so while it might be new in the theme of an outdoor recreation decision to really think about and prioritize diversity and representation on our boards and commissions, right? We have done that, but so too has the state as a whole, and thinking about how to compensate folks for their time. And so there was some benefit in just sort of like the momentum that Oregon's gone, and the decisions in public administration have gone over the past couple of years. So I don't want to take undue credit. There's a lot that was like, hey, look, we cared about that too, and now the whole thing's moving. So I would say that a really large amount of my time that was unexpected, perhaps should have been, but was unexpected, has gone to supporting local communities in their efforts to recover specifically from wildfire impacts. We know and have known that there's a desire at the local level and an identified need for help in terms of sort of multi-party facilitation. If you live in a small community, often there's a hodgepodge of private, state, federal land around, and you want to build a trail. Something like that is just not all that simple. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as it sometimes could be or should be. And so we have this concept in the plan of recreation zones. And really the notion there is just that we need a certain combination of folks around the table that's broader than state parks. And we're not exactly sure whose role it is to be that convener and problem solver. And that was all thinking about proactive sort of cool stuff, community-driven vision ideas. And after the fall of 2020 and into 2021, it was like, no, we need to help these communities recover now. And so that need around community technical assistance and sort of outdoor recreation planning that's not specific to property boundaries of one park or one, thing, that's true, and even more true now, not just in a recovery context. And so I have presented just in brief in the past about a partnership that we had established with the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance team. And there's a variety of projects that OPRD even has been involved in with that RTCA program. And I have to give them a lot of credit and thanks here, but we're nowhere near, in my opinion, meeting the opportunity there as a state to support that sort of community-driven outdoor recreation development. So that's been a pretty significant learning, and just in terms of thinking about outdoor recreation planning and how the state can support those local projects. So be probably the top one that I would hold to mind. And then second to that, and probably the umbrella under which the website project falls, is just a recognition on my side and some ownership of the fact that like we could, and I could probably do a better job of external communication. So taking stock of these accomplishments and sharing out in different ways some of these progress reports and updates and things like that. So it's, people don't typically visit the state parks website for this sort of brief, but there is an interest amongst our partners, other agencies and nonprofits, to know how this work is going. And so that's something that I've just been thinking about as well, is just how to do a better job of like regular updates on this work, specifically on the office. So those are two that I might leave you with.
That's great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was excellent. Really exciting to hear about this work.
Cool. Thank you.
It touches so many of the things that we talk about frequently in terms of that building that capacity and figuring out how we partner and help build that, create those access to that information that people can really benefit from.
We did have the chance, I believe it was this meeting 3 years ago, to go through these draft recommendations in a training. And if there's any interest in a future meeting in terms of looking at these recommendations in more depth, like I said, I'm always happy to do that. I just was excited to give you this update a few years later. So with permission at that point, I'll move us on to 3B.
That sounds good.
Great. So we spent some time last year working to follow on this task force with a similarly sort of diverse group of representatives appointed around the Office of Outdoor Recreation as an advisory council, and the appointed citizen members or governor's appointees, 7 folks, have met twice, once at the Outdoor Recreation Summit, our annual Outdoor Recreation Summit that was in the fall near Mount Hood, and then again just last month virtually. Our next meeting will be about a month from now, and that meeting is where I anticipate bringing in more of the state and nonprofit partners that'll serve in an ex officio role. But the chairperson, and again, this isn't truly a decision-making body, but one more for advice and collaboration, does have to be one of the appointed folks. And so sort of as we were doing this initial, not bookkeeping, but kind of like just the administrative stuff that you need to do to stand up a new board, I went back through the rules that we all looked at, and I was like, oh no, they can't actually choose their own chair. You choose their chair. And so hopefully you got Melissa Wong's brief bio. Melissa attended the Outdoor Recreation Summit, as did the rest of the advisory council, which is a great sort of fast track to learning for all of them to have this 2 or 3 days together with all of our content. And interestingly, 6 of the 7 folks have day jobs that put them somewhere in the outdoor recreation space, either for a nonprofit or for a private business. And Melissa is unique in that she isn't employed in this space. She is sort of purely driven to the public service because she wants to. And so she carries with her a unanimous recommendation to serve as a chair for the next few years. That I'm sort of bringing forward that recommendation on their behalf. It's not my recommendation, it's their recommendation that I'm bringing to you here today. So see if there's any questions. Now speaking, I would love to see Melissa as chair. I could work with any of the folks really closely. We're just sort of starting to build our rapport and systems and that sort of thing. So.
Great, thanks. And I know I did see her bio. I don't know if the whole commission got that, but we do have that available. So I'm not sure if it went out to everybody. Okay. Any?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Kaylin.
I was just going to say, Melissa works at OHSU as a healthcare professional and native Oregonian and passionate about the outdoors in her free time.
Madam Chair, if I could comment?
Yes.
It seems odd that we're picking your chair, Kaylin. A little awkward. I'm happy to move approval of this appointment. We might look to change that so that you can choose your own chair at some point. So I will move approval of Melissa Wong as chair of the Outdoor Recreation Advisory Council.
Great. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion or questions for Kaylin on this? Great.
just want to echo Commissioner Berger. I agree. It is kind of awkward, and we'll fully support and like the recommendations of this council, and we'll figure out how to administratively make this easier for this work to continue getting done.
Noted. All right, then.
We had
all
that
the-
same moment of what it goes to the commission. Because many of the other internal ATV, the SHPO, those ones all generally I nod and say yes, and it doesn't necessarily come to you, but we'll sort it out as we mature here in this role.
Yeah, thank you. Otherwise, it would have been done in November. And, not to derail the conversation, but the most recent hiccup was that there's the governor's appointees, and then there are sort of administrative appointees by agencies. And there's been a bit of a miscommunication with the change in administration that the governor's appointment staff now think that they might have to do additional agency appointments, and that's not necessary. So I'm working on the back end stuff to make this as smooth as possible. And anyway, I know there's a vote to come, but just wanted to add that too. Thanks.
Thanks. There aren't further questions, discussion, or comments. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we're glad to approve that and support that. And I just want to say, I'm already bummed that I'm not going to be on this commission that much longer, but I'm really bummed if I don't get to hear all this really fun discussion of all the details of all the great work you've been doing, Kaylin. So I know the commission is looking forward to that opportunity. So congratulations on all the great work and progress over the last couple of years.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great.
And please
Thank
tell
you.
Melissa, thank you for hanging in there and being patient and not giving up on us.
Yeah.
Will do.
Great. So I believe we're on to 3C, the legislative update with Katie. Hi, Katie.
Thank you, Chair Ellen, Director Sumption, and members of the commission. Katie Gauthier with the legislative update. So the legislative session kicked off in January, and well, you can all see, we are just in the middle of it now. So I started last night to tell you how many bills there were, and now there are more. So we're at 2,700 bills that have been introduced so far, and OPRD is tracking, let's see if I can, we're tracking about 288 bills. The deadline to introduce bills was earlier this week, so they're now all coming out. That doesn't really mean that's the deadline. That was the first deadline for legislators to get all of their bills in, but committees can still introduce bills and the presiding officers can. So the bulk of the bills should be out this week, but we'll see. The first main deadline that we're watching, March 17th, is the deadline for work sessions to be posted. So things are moving fast, and there are a whole lot of bills that call for studies and are placeholders. So it will be interesting to see what happens with those bills. And then everything will be over by the end of June, maybe a little sooner. It's really important to note, particularly this session, that OPRD has no position on most of the bills. We work with the governor's office if there's a bill that we want to take a position on, and let the governor's office know, and they coordinate between state agencies to make sure that there's not a fiscal impact on a different state agency, and coordinate between state agencies. So we're working very close coordination with the governor's office if there's a bill that we want to take a position on. So I was going to share just a little bit about some of the bills that you may be more interested in and that we're watching, and then happy to take any questions if there's a bill that you've heard about and want to know more about it. So the first one is the bill that has had a work session. House Bill 2737 is the bill that we did work with Representative Sanchez on. It would allow state agencies to transfer property to one of the 9 federally recognized Indian tribes in Oregon. That bill has made it through the House. It passed out of the House on a 60-0 vote on Oregon's birthday. So that will be moving through the Senate, we hope. And Lisa testified in the committee to provide information about the background. We don't have a position, but we do are sharing background information on how that bill would work and how we've transferred to counties property and how that works to provide some background. So it's mostly a technical bill. Then for the hearings, there has been a hearing on the Oregon Coast Trail funding bill. It's a little confusing what this bill may or may not do. The bill itself calls for $1 million in general fund, specifically to the Oregon Coast Trail. And then it would potentially could direct some funding that's within OPRD toward the Oregon Coast Trail. I think there's some confusion with the bill sponsors on what the bill does versus what the bill says it does. It had a hearing earlier this week, and so we may end up having some conversations with the bill sponsors on what they're intending for the bill to do. We do not have a position on the bill, but did testify to provide some background information on where the action plan development within the Oregon Coast Trail is and how we work with multi-agencies, state and federal and local and tribal organizations on development of the Oregon Coast Trail, and would do so if we were to receive additional funding. And there is a corresponding House bill that it says exactly the same thing. It hasn't had a hearing, but so it looks like if something were to move, it might be the Senate bill. Senate Bill 890 is the Park and Recreation Commission membership change. This is the proactive bill that you supported introducing. It due to changes in the administration and timelines, all of our proactive bills weren't introduced on behalf of the governor. We had to work to get them introduced by a legislator or the committee. So this was introduced by the Senate Natural Resources Committee and then had a hearing this week in the Senate Natural Resources Committee. So this is the one that would change commission membership to tie to the 6 congressional districts plus 1 additional floating member and ensure that there would always be someone from east of the Cascades and west of the Coast Range. And then some other bills of interest. There is a park employee safety bill, House Bill 2011, sorry. That is was at the request of the Oregon Recreation and Park Association. And it in previous sessions, there was a bill that would have just applied to OPRD employee, commissioned officer, park rangers. This applies to all park and recreation employees that if they were assaulted in the line of duty, it would expand the, make that a 3rd-degree felony assault. And that bill hasn't had a hearing, but there has been interest, particularly in the media, about that bill. And ORPA is working to try to get a hearing for that bill. Senate Bill 149 extends the special assessment for historic properties program within SHPO for 6 years. So it'd be to 2030. And it actually just was scheduled for a hearing last night. So March 1st, it will have a hearing. Senate Bill 888 is another one of the proactive bills that we worked on. This is the ATV safety education card expansion. So it would expand to class 4, the side-by-side ATVs, and then class 2 to the Jeeps and sand rails that aren't street legal. And this is in the Joint Transportation Committee. It doesn't have a hearing schedule yet, but we'll work on that. And Senate Bill 889 is the other proactive bill that you approved us working on. It's the ATV class 4 definition change that would take it away from tire wheel size to an industry standard engine size definition, and then also remove the need for windshield wipers just to have them be unobstructed, because many ATVs have half or plexiglass windshields, so it's difficult for them to have windshield wipers. And those, again, are both in transportation. And then there was a new one that was introduced that I just saw this morning that I thought you would all be interested in. House Concurrent Resolution 17 honors and recognizes Vicki and Jerry Berger for their leadership. So I think we'll all be supporters of that.
That one, I just got it on my mail about the minute you started talking, and I showed it to my husband. We're very honored. We're very honored. It's very
It's missing your state park commission service.
I was gonna say she's
I
among
did not
us.
know
It needs
about
to
it
be.
until 3 minutes ago.
Oh,
Isn't that sweet?
and she's among us. Like, how cool is that? And I think I saw Jerry a minute ago too.
Yeah, I just ran back and handed him my phone when it got sent to me. I said, "Did you know?"
Oh,
Yeah,
congratulations.
it's very sweet. Thank you. Thank
We'll
So
have
that-
to rename ships seashores.
Burger Bay will be available. So that was what I had. Are there questions about bills that you've heard of or anything I can clarify?
I had a question, Katie, related to 2011, the one about park employee safety. I know that was presented previously and didn't go forward. Is there any, that may just have been the amount of bills people try to get through and don't always get through, but I'm just curious if there were any reasons or why if we're more hopeful this.
It's not, we're probably not more hopeful. It definitely is something that is, we see a need, and our local and regional park employees see a need, but there's also a thought that people who assault somebody don't know that there's an increased penalty because they're assaulting somebody within a park. So is that the best way to stop an assault? Some people who are opposed don't think that it is. I don't know, Lisa or Chris, do you have other thoughts on why that one's not going to move forward?
The other one was an agency bill. This is looking at all park and recreation professionals. So it's sponsored by Oregon Park and Recreation Association. So the nuance is that it's a much larger group with maybe a stronger lobbying interest in it. But I will also throw out there, because I'd probably be remiss if I didn't, that many public officials right now are feeling very similar threats, whether it's, DEQ or state lands or ag, pretty much anybody who's interacting with the public in any type of regulatory function. And I do know that it's high on the governor's concern list right now, is trying to figure out how to help our public servants and our public interact in a more safe manner. So I don't know about the bill in particular, but it is a very very hot topic right now for all of us. So hopefully we'll get some better training at a minimum, or some other practices in place that will help, even if the bill doesn't move forward.
Yeah, Chair Allen, Director Assumption, Chris with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. There have been concerns raised in the past about inequitable application of increased penalties. There is an equity impact, and I think that's one of the things that the Judiciary Committee has discussed in the past that they have concerns about. From our perspective, not just interested in the outcome of being able to bring felony charges against somebody who assaults a park ranger, but using it as a tool before an incident in order to get maybe a little more attention from the courts and from law enforcement as we're seeing behavior escalate, because typically these are individuals who are known within a park, and we can sort of see a trend towards something that becomes serious, and we'd like to get ahead of that before it gets to something like criminal charges. And having a felony implicated sometimes gets more attention. So that's the only thing I would add, just as far as context goes.
Thanks, Chris. I saw Commissioner Hill and then Commissioner Berger.
Yeah, Katie, I have a question about Senate Bill 76 and the funding. It looks like one-time funding for capital improvements of history museums, and how our heritage grants go towards museums, but not necessarily capital improvements. Is that correct? I don't understand. One, where the 3 million, if it's directed, or if you have any background on that, if it's directed towards a particular need, or where we provide funds generally or not for capital improvements of museums in the state.
Yes, I mean, that one was a unique bill, and it's not the definition of museum in that bill, and if history museum in that bill is different than the grants that we currently provide. So that would be a concern if it were an ongoing grant program. Our heritage staff identified that it's not quite in alignment. We could do it. It would be a new grant program. But if we were to have an ongoing program, it would be easier if it were more aligned with the grant program we currently operate. I think this one was really a legislator's desire to fund a particular project. And it took us a while to figure out exactly what the project might be, but I think earlier in the week we figured out what the project might be, and it was one specific building that they were trying to get funded. So it was pretty narrowly worded to fund a specific building that they would like to fund. So it would be new money and one-time funding, and we could do it. I mean, we've done that for other things, but that's where we do fund some capital, but most, and Chrissy, I don't know, Chrissy, she's not on. We do fund some of those things, but not quite definitely not to that amount of funding.
So it's seemed like based on the kind of conversation, it was like maybe this capital investment to then create a space that might be able to store other museum curations and things that would need protection. So it seemed very specific to a one-time ask.
But there isn't necessarily a program that would fund major large repairs to a county museum or something of that nature.
No.
Thank you.
Commissioner Berger. Commissioner Berger waved at me.
My question's been answered. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Katie on any of the bills? That's a lot to track. I mean,
it's been a very busy couple weeks for Katie. She's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And Commissioner Allen, real quick before Chris goes into 3D, just wanted to give you all an update that I just heard from Commissioner Grasty. He's in Sisters, roads are super nasty, traffic's light, but he wanted Vicky in particular to know he's okay, so he didn't have to text you too.
Great, thanks. So we will next turn to Chris for the 2L State Park update.
Here, Chair Allen, Director Assumption, members of the Commission, Chris Havel with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Here in agenda item 3D related to 2L State Park. This is just an information item. The park itself, let me just refresh your memory about where it is. This is a Southern Oregon park right on the Rogue River, north of Medford in the Central Point, White City area, east of Grants Pass. Small day use park with picnic area, short trail, river access, popular with fly fishers and people who just like to hang during the day on the banks of the beautiful Rogue River. So for a couple of years, we were engaged with a local business using a special use permit, which is a short-term, non-exclusive permit to allow this business that operates jet boats on the Rogue River to operate out of the park. Normally, you cannot conduct business transactions or advertise in a park without permission. So this was permission. It was a short-term special use permit that allowed them to hang a shingle basically there in the park and load and unload jet boat passengers using the boat facilities in the park. That was intended as a pilot project through the special use permit. It ended in September 2022 after some on again, off again work. The permit started, ran. We got comments back from people in the park, some compliments, some complaints. The project was ended, changes were made and then restarted as for the second phase of a pilot, and then ended again in this last September. From what we learned there, we started preparing to offer a concession opportunity. Unlike a special use permit, concessions are normally exclusive and they're for longer periods of time, usually 5 years with renewal periods that sort of add on to that. The part of the research to decide whether a concession is a good fit for the park involves not just talking with local officials and other agency partners, but also doing public outreach. And it was during that phase and before, even during the pilot project, that we were hearing concerns, especially from people outside the park, concerned about the impact of high-speed boat traffic on the river. And this is a combination of landowners, environmental concerns, other recreational groups. We were really hearing two distinct voices in the community, people who saw this as a wonderful opportunity to use the river. And for many of them, it was their first boating opportunity, also their first experience with the Rogue River. And the operator for the jet boats gave them an opportunity to experience something that they hadn't before. So they were strongly in favor of continuing that kind of business relationship in the park. On the flip side, there were not only those environmental concerns, more social concerns about like damage to property and noise and just the appearance of jet boats on the river. That gave us pause. It's important to note here that jet boats are an allowed use of the river. That's not something that the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department determines or sets. So what we were really doing was taking advantage of an existing use to offer more recreational opportunities at the park. One of the things we're interested in and continue to be interested in is different ways of bringing people to their state park system and to have outdoor experiences that will enrich their lives. And this seemed to fit that. However, there were enough concerns that instead of pursuing a concession, we have decided and announced publicly that we've decided that we're not going to be pursuing a concession of this type at this park at this time. So we did do a public survey and a public meeting. District Manager Danny Padilla and Park Manager Nathan Sable really did an outstanding job engaging with the community, listening to people and offering both people who support the idea of a concession and people who don't an opportunity to fully air their concerns. It is interesting, during some of our public outreach work, we did hear from people who are interested in seeing Tuvel perform at a higher level. And that included the idea of concessions, but not necessarily boat concessions, concessions for things like catering or food, for instance, in order to make it easier for people to use the park for group events. In addition to hearing about a need for better restrooms and more group shelters and more trails and more paddle access rather than just catering to motorboats. So it was, even though this was focused on the concession, it was an interesting way to gather input on the park overall. That will have the park management team doing a lot of work to improve the park. District Manager Padilla's main comment here was, not only is the river maybe not ready socially for this kind of use to increase in the area, but we have some work to do in the park to separate different kinds of use to prevent conflicts from happening between people swimming and wading and boat traffic, for instance. So let's invest in the park and get the park maybe in a better place to support different kinds of use before we pursue a concession. We are also a little concerned that there seems to be a lot of churn in the community about whether jet boats and high-speed boat use is appropriate on this stretch of the Rogue River. So we'll be offering our support to the Oregon State Marine Board and local law enforcement, who are really the leads on deciding how this river gets used in the broader recreation context. So that if they need our help there to reach out to members of the community or to look at it from the recreational aspect, that we're there to support them when they do that. There are also questions about water quality and erosion along the river as well, which are again outside the purview of OPRD, but we're willing to work with those partners to help them have those conversations. So I just wanted to let you know that we'd had this conversation. Chair Allen, I know you received emails as part of an email campaign discussing concerns with increasing concession use at the park. So I just wanted to sort of close the loop on all of that, and happy to take any questions about it.
Great. Thanks for the update, Chris, and thanks to all the staff and their hard work and making sure people knew that we heard them and, making sure that we're taking all of those different views into account. Any questions or comments on this topic?
Great.
No? All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for teaching me how to manage multiple incoming emails in a respectful fashion.
It's one of the many pleasures of your position. We may have neglected to include that in the recruitment announcement for the commissions. I don't know.
I felt very popular there for a while.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, so I think if there's nothing else on that one, the next we're on to 3E best practices, and Chris.
We'll do so. Chair Allen, Director Assumption, members of the commission, Chris Havel with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Here on agenda item 3E, this is approval of the best practices report for the most recent fiscal year. This is an action item. The brief will say that we had a workshop on this yesterday. I want to correct both the brief and the record. We did not. I was away from the office. We will do a workshop. Some of the feedback that we got when you were responding independently to your review of our best practices as a commission. One commissioner, Commissioner Doerr, did mention that the openness of our meetings is important, and it's contributed meaningfully to the quality of the commission's work. Commissioner Doerr, I noted you said in your comment you're not necessarily proposing a best practice, but I do recommend that we spend some time discussing that since this very issue has come up with some of our other bodies. The State Advisory Commission on Historic Preservation, for instance, also sees great value in the openness of our meetings, but there are security concerns associated with that. And how do we strike that balance, and how do we know that we're doing it right? So I do have some thoughts to share, and discussing that in a workshop at our next meeting, I think would be useful. But what I have for you today is the 16 practices. I will get them up on screen. I know you received an updated brief, but I will get it up here for you just so you can see it. The 15 of the 16 practices are mandated by the state. All bodies such as yours have to evaluate and describe their own performance when it comes to these best practices, which is something that you did independently, and I've tallied the results here. The 16th practice is specific to property acquisitions, and it's one that this body adopted on its own. There's no limit to the number of practices that you think really represent high performance or sort of your public duty. And that's the purpose of our workshops, is to sort of vet those and decide whether we need to make any specific improvements. But aside from that workshop, you'll note that all these practices, in your opinion, either meet or exceed your own personal subjective standards. And I offer this report to you for approval. What we do with this is submit it to the Oregon Department of Administrative Services and include it as a key performance measure in our biannual budgets. So I will stop there. Remind you that that brief is includes this report as an attachment. 3E attachment A report is the way it'll look in your digital files, and submit it to you for your approval.
Great, thanks, Chris. Do we have any comments, questions, follow up on this for Chris?
I appreciate the overview, and just to explain the comment I made, as I said, as Chris was saying, I do think that the commission at this point, we are verifiably doing certain things that are new, and that our performance standards to some extent have to adapt to the circumstances. And some of this relates to the communication that we are now doing with both, as we are today, with each other through virtual means, but also with the outside world in a much more transparent way than maybe was the case pre-COVID, because of the way that things are now broadcast. And so there's there are certain sets of issues that don't necessarily need to be standards unto themselves, but maybe need to factor into how we think about the mission and some of the metrics we use. And so again, we'll get back to that at a later date, but I'm trying to recall what I wrote because I wrote it a while ago and in haste, and Chris will have to remind me actually what I said exactly, but anyway, those are some important points and a big part of our mission and rising to the mission in the ways we handle communications with the wider world. So, but anyway, other than that, though, I appreciate the review of the performance standards. I think it's interesting to see where we have uniform agreement that we're exceeding standards and where we have a little bit of variability. That's interesting too, but I do think it all indicates that we're on the right track. So thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Doer. Commissioner Blasher.
Yeah, thanks. I would move to go forward and approve these best practices and keep this going. Just want to share a few comments, and I really appreciate the piece about like the access and ease through remote and just exploring that. I'm also thinking too, as I put a comment in there about how are we advancing some of our efforts to, advance diversity, equity, inclusion, whether that is how we are tracking the operational metrics. And I know that the staff side has done a lot on the engage, relate, adapt work, and we've seen a lot of presentations. We've had some conversations as a commission, but also are there things that we as a commission can do to better reflect the diversity of the representation that's on this commission, how people are able to get access to this commission and understand that it exists and be a part of that. And so as I'm getting ready to term off here, I'm also thinking about how can I help recruit other people in Congressional District 3 and trying to find the resources to like, where's the description of the position and those things. And like, it's in different bits and pieces. I see like our ORTAC team has a very clear, here's who we are, here's the description, here's the process, because I know that's more of an internal thing. And we're at this place of working with the governor's office for some of these appointments. But so two different thoughts there. How are we continuing to look at the best practices of advancing our equity inclusion initiatives? And I know that there's work at the state level to set some of those broader expectations, but where does that show up potentially in our best practices? But then also something to this effect of how do we as a commission function in a way that is more accessible, seeking to connect with folks from the range of diversity, whether that's race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. So are there different ways that we can think about that? And I realize it's more of a work session conversation, which we didn't fully get to, but yeah, so I'll just offer. It's great to see the continued good work that we're doing here. I'm excited to see the continued evolution, and we'll push for those things in my last few meetings in my time on this commission to just try to help how we can make us better. And I will be looking to recruit folks, but want to make sure that I'm actually able to recruit folks to potentially apply if that's something that's wanted, versus if there's a whole other process that is behind the scenes, then that'll be good to know too. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Blasher. Chris.
Yeah, Chair Allen, Commissioner Blasher, thank you so much for that. Your comment about goal setting and tracking DEI efforts, both internally and externally, is both in the report, and I'm carrying that forward to the workshop because we tend to be vague in our language about that, and setting something concrete that we can push back against and challenge ourselves with. That should be one of the purposes of doing best practices review, rather than it just being a loosey-goosey, how do we feel about it? How are we actually doing? The best practices have something that concrete that you can tie into. So thank you for reminding me that. I've made a note here. And I should also apologize. I was supposed to have changed the surveys to allow abstentions from commenting on particular measures. I neglected to do that to my template last year, and I've got it marked this year. So both those things I'm going to carry forward on and drag you into a meeting, Commissioner Blasher, even though you're not a commissioner at some point.
Happy to participate as the general public of this state of Oregon.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Really good comments and observations and questions about this. So thanks for that. Anything else? I believe Commissioner Blasher had moved to approve it. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Thank you.
Commissioner seconded. Any further discussion? All right, so this is also to approve the report and add abstain based on what's written in the action requested. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. I'm gonna suggest people sort of self-manage for breaks if that's okay for people, and we'll just keep moving. And if we'll do a time check at some point in case we just need a collective break. But for the moment, if we keep going, is that okay? All right, so if so, we'll move on to a budget update with Daniel or Rebecca.
Yeah, Chair Allen, I'm seeing 2 Ian Johnsons in our attendees list. One of them is probably Daniel, because of the way that Ian joined the earlier meeting. Daniel, if you would raise your hand in Zoom, I will both rename you and get you in to present. Yay. Okay. All right.
We might have shared a link.
Okay. So we're going to do that.
Always glad when
And-
there's more than one Jennifer Allen around, so I could point to her. And
yeah.
say, I mean, that one.
And then bring you into the meeting. Okay, there we go.
I get mixed up with Lisa Hanson from OWeb, formerly AG, all the time. And I'm always like, am I the good Lisa or the bad Lisa?
Always the good Lisa.
No.
Hey, Daniel, that sounds like a movie, good movie title. Don't you think actually? Right.
This is the baby awake. Can you turn her around?
I was gonna say the baby's moving.
Is she awake?
She's got the hiccups, so.
Oh, oh,
Oh, look at her.
oh.
Hi, Clara.
Holding right now, so.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, Daniel.
And this is your first
Yeah,
YouTube
I
appearance,
know.
Clara. So,
Oh, Clara. Oh.
okay, all right.
A
She's
trooper.
beautiful.
So good morning, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, members of the commission. For the record, Daniel Killam, Deputy Director for Business Administration here at OPRD. Rebecca was going to answer any questions that you might have had. She couldn't join us today, so I am filling in for her, and hopefully along with Lisa, we can answer any questions that you may have. But as you know from listening to Rebecca over the last few meetings, she is a wealth of information that both Lisa and I find ourselves a bit at a disadvantage. So you received all of the information in your packet, and basically Rebecca briefed me on what she wanted to just convey to you is there really hasn't been many changes from the governor's recommended budget, but she did want me to alert you to a couple of things that were included in your packet. One is our Chief Financial Officer Analyst added 4 packages that weren't previously listed. The most important of those is the one for around $20 million that will help fund the Main Street program in the coming biennium. So she wanted to make sure that you had noted that on there. The second was that there was a lottery decrease from the former forecast. And so that is also reflected in the new recommended budget. And finally, probably one of the most critical things that we'll be realizing here shortly is we imagine that the March lottery dollars that we'll be receiving will exceed the 25%. And that we will be triggered to implement that in our local government grant programs going forward. Right now, there's only a $3 million difference between where we're at and what that trigger should push us to. So we most likely, when we run that grant this next cycle, we will see somewhere around increase from the 7.5 million that we currently have to award to about 14 million. So that's going to be a huge increase. And we are right now in the process of the team, Michelle and Mark Cowan are ramping up to make sure that we get that information out there so that people can take advantage of that increase in funding. So with that said, I'm more than happy to answer or try to answer any questions that any of you might have about the budget, but I think most of it was included in what was in the 4A information.
Great. So Daniel, you probably just covered this, but so I think there was a new lottery forecast out yesterday. Is that right? And is there any update on that? Or maybe that was what you were just referring to.
Yeah, I saw that, Commissioner Allen, thanks for the question. But unless Lisa, did you get those numbers? I did not receive those yesterday.
Okay,
sorry, I didn't get them either. I just saw the governor's announcement, but normally Rebecca sends them, and Rebecca's out. So I believe they're favorable, but
if you like
them up.
Go ahead.
So we can look them up and get you the details.
Right. That's what I was going to suggest. In fact, when I'm done here, I can try to go grab those numbers and bring them back.
Sure, that would be good. The implications of it, as you say, it's probably the trend continues, and the implications for the 25% probably as well. Commissioner Berger.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I was down there sitting with Katie yesterday at the legislature, and they were presenting the forecast. So I didn't expect numbers today, and I don't think anybody can get numbers that fast because they just released. But I would like an update because they're out, and when at some point an email is all I need. But I did note that they're new numbers. There's always new numbers.
We'll make sure that we get the new numbers in the forecast out through an email to all of you.
Great, thanks.
It's always the risk of when we do it now, because the forecast usually comes out while we're meeting, and it's like, can we scramble quick enough? But I am sure Caleb was all over it.
Sounds good. Any other questions on the budget or any of this, Commissioner Blasher?
Thanks. I was just wondering, were there any, you had the Ways and Means Committee meetings recently. Is there anything big that came out of that from earlier this month we should be aware of or anything?
No. So so that was quite the whirlwind, right? The governor announced her budget on Wednesday, which just meant like, here's the high level of the budget. We hadn't actually seen our agency level detail. So the team scrambled, Tanya gone and Rebecca new in her role. And I think she's got 2 new folks in their roles. In between them and Chris and Katie, they were able to literally get that budget. And poor Jennifer, we had to give her like 10 minutes and say, can you review 500 pages and get back to us in an hour? But we navigated and not only got the budget in for review and approval and audit at DAS, but also got the presentation ready by Friday afternoon. And then we were up the following week. So I've been told it's a huge compliment to be asked to go first, but it was a lot of work. And it was helpful because they were still getting settled into their committee roles and a lot of new people. Katie and I were able to go over and do all the ledge visits and get to know everybody and help them understand the agency so they're better prepared. I'm happy to report it was pretty much a love fest. They were very supportive of the budget, asked if it was enough, if they could do more, how could they help come up with a better funding source. And just were really appreciative of us going first and the way that we've navigated the last few years and not created additional, opportunities for them to have to figure out how to jump in and navigate. And we're really excited to hear that we're on a really good financial trajectory out of it. So it went well. And there was more in this governor's recommended budget than in the last one. So we were excited to see everything pretty much get added back in.
Thanks for that update, and thanks for the hustle from staff and everybody, and just reflecting on 3 years ago, the beginning of the pandemic, just the uncertainty, and so just appreciate everything that you and staff and folks have done to just navigate through a lot of uncertainty and still continue to make those difficult decisions that it's really hard to have staff go, but also being able to bring people back and all the demand. And so, that budget is a reflection of the priorities and values and things that I'm trying to put out there. And so, appreciate all the work. And I guess the nice thing about going early in the process is they're very willing to ask if you need more money, because at the beginning, everybody's got
they don't
funding.
know they don't have it.
Even if they don't have it, they can ask. So thanks for those updates. Appreciate all the great work on this.
Yeah, and the most important one that came up that was added back in is the extension of our seasonals, which would allow us to have seasons on for longer seasons, because we all know we don't really have seasons any longer. And the questions were things like, is that really enough? Do you need them longer than that? So it was very supportive, and it was really nice to have that kind of support early on. So I wish all of our other agencies after us the same luck.
Great. Well, thanks for that update, and echoing Jonathan, thanks for all the hard work and putting this together over the last many years to put us in a good place where we've got great support across the board. That's great. Yeah, so any other questions or comments related to the budget?
Looking forward to those seasonals being there longer. That's great news.
I was really looking forward to you guys asking Daniel really detailed questions, like what's line 23 on page 16? He wanted to do that.
We could ask you that, Daniel.
Actually, because I read every line in the time you gave me before I signed it, so you can just ask me those detailed questions.
There you go.
Not Jennifer. She actually caught things. That was the best part. She actually found things, which was awesome.
The other Daniel is the one that can answer all those questions.
Daniel was saved by the baby.
Right.
Thanks, Clara.
Well, thank you, actually, Daniel, and we appreciate that. And pass on our thanks to Rebecca as well, please.
I will do that. Thank you, Chair Allen.
Great. All right, so I think we are moving now to number 5, real estate with Alice Beals, starting with 5A, Minum SRA.
Thank you, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, Commissioners. I have a few items to share with you. And I'll start my PowerPoint, forgive me. I was having technical difficulties here. So let me share my screen with you. Is that showing now?
Not yet.
No.
I
You got
apologize
this,
for
Alice.
technical
It's okay.
difficulties. I do. The first item that I have for you is item 5A. It is a proposal to acquire land at Minum State Recreation Area. Ownership of some of the adjacent lands at Minum have been of interest to OPRD for many years. Our ownership of these lands would help to, protect the cultural resources that are known to be located within this area. And it would also protect the scenic quality of this location, as well as provide some additional recreational opportunities for the public. Over the years, the lands have been owned by various timber companies, and they have remained undeveloped. A former contact with the current timber management group made them aware of our interest in this property. They have recently sold a little over 4,000 acres on the south side of Highway 84 here to ODF&W, and it is now a part of the Minum River Wildlife Area. After that sale occurred, OPRD staff reached out to the representative to inquire if they would consider a possible sale of these lands on the north side to parks, and they said they would definitely consider it at this time. The two parcels consist of the 321 acres, the south portion, and an additional 200-acre parcel on the northwest that is connected but not adjacent to our land. Staff have recently requested appraisal work on this and will proceed with additional due diligence activities in anticipation of coming before you again in the near future, for approval of acquisition.
Great, thanks, Alice. Do we have any questions or comments for Alice? Commissioner Doerr.
Thank you, Alice. I just want to state my thanks for your continued work on this area, and my support for continuing to investigate what is possible here in light of the cultural and historical significance of this area, as well as the property's potential to enhance the experience within the existing OPRD properties. And so, again, I hope we can see a good path forward on this one, and just want to thank you for your efforts and express support. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Dorr. Any other questions for Alice on this one or comments? Nope, I'll second what Commissioner Dorr said. So thank you for that. All right, I think we're on to 5B Ochako scenic viewpoint.
I'll be presenting that one as well. Agenda item 5B is also an acquisition of adjacent lands. Again, this is an informational item. We are not asking for action at this time. Several years ago, staff identified a 9-acre property adjacent to us as a property of interest in further protecting the scenic quality of the hillside, as well as expanding on the pedestrian trails in that area. Further review of the location of the trails that were created by users at this popular viewpoint indicate that possibly due to topography or just not recognizing the property lines, other areas of their property were also impacted. The owner of the lands is aware of the public's trespassing on them and recently reached out to OPRD to ask if we'd be interested in acquiring that lands, as well as a small area within their developed parcel that encompasses the trail as well. Staff have recently requested appraisal work to be done on this, and will proceed with additional due diligence. And we are in regular communication with this owner, and he is very supportive going forward. Further protecting this area. I hope to be coming to you very soon with a request for final approval on this one.
Great, thank you, Alice. Any questions for Alice on this or comments? All right, thank you for that, Alice. I don't see any questions or comments, so I think we're moving on, Alice, to Silver Falls reciprocal access easement.
Okay. And I'm still fighting technical difficulties here, but I'm right there with you now. So Silver Falls, the request that we hope to bring to you in the near future will be for a reciprocal easement with one of our neighbors. As we proceeded through the activities relating to our Silver Falls North Gateway project, we were reminded that a neighbor had come forward several years ago regarding the location of a shared driveway that, as our survey team reviewed this, recognized that the driveway is on both sides of the property line here. So both parties are using this one driveway for accessing their residences and their outbuildings. And to ensure clear title so that this question doesn't come up in the future, the two parties are negotiating a reciprocal easement that would solve this problem for both. The easement will allow for the continued use that exists today on this road. It will provide for ingress, egress, and utilities. It will serve purposes such as residential, forest management, and of course, emergency exit from the abutting properties. The easement is not intended to be for public access into our lands. The public access into our lands is approximately 500 feet southeast of this driveway. As we continue to work with this owner and negotiate the terms and conditions of the final reciprocal easement, we hope to be coming forward to you in the next few months for approval of granting and accepting this right.
Great, thank you, Alice. Do you have any questions or comments, input from the commission on this? Nope. All right. Well, thank you for working through this.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Looks like a good outcome there. And so I think next we're turning to Eway Timlikin with LAD.
Chair Allen, Director Sumption, Commissioners, I'm Lad Whitcomb in the Real Estate Services Unit. And I'm bringing item 5D, an action item, before you today. Since about 2008, we've been trying to acquire 3.23 acres just north of the Eway Timlikin State Historic Site. This property has been identified in the master plan since 2009 as an area of concern. We had tried for years to come to an agreement with the previous owner and were unable to do that. It has since changed hands, and the current owner bought it with a view to develop it. But they also mentioned that they are interested in also coming to an agreement with us. And if we're able to do that, they would be willing to sell it to OPRD. We had this appraised, and a recent appraisal came in at $475,000. I presented that offer to the owner, and they rejected that offer and countered at $701,000. The most that we are able to offer is 10% over appraised value, which is $522,500. And we believe that we can, through some discussions we've been having, can obtain the other $178,500 from outside sources. What I'm asking you today is to allow us to purchase this property for $522,500 of OPRD funds, with the additional funds coming from outside sources. Are there any questions on this or any comments?
Commissioner Berger. Thanks, Lad.
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, I'm sorry to say, but somehow I've lost my automatic hand, so I have to use a real one. And I apologize, it's sort of confusing. This is a comment from staff. Zoom meetings are great, but they don't replace our opportunities to go and visit these places. I would have a lot of problems with this if I had not walked this property and seen exactly the visual of what we're trying to do here. It's unfortunate that somebody's, trying to take advantage of these circumstances and asking us to pay more than I think we're a little comfortable with, but having actually seen it and understanding its value, I am fully on board with this. And the same could be said of the Minham property that we just talked about. I remember the discussion as we drove up there that we looked at that. So never replace everything with Zoom, because you just cannot visually understand things unless you're standing right there. So I'm supportive of this and appreciate that we've had the opportunity to actually see it in person.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Commissioner Doer.
Well, I for one would like to echo Commissioner Berger's comments. I too would have more heartburn about the difference in between appraised value and proposed sales price if I hadn't been able to walk that land and see how it fits into the larger vision that OPRD has for the larger area, and understand the value of the natural and cultural resources of the site, the scenic value, the recreational value, and also to understand the relationships that OPRD has been fostering with the tribes associated with this area. And I'm especially encouraged by the fact that we have what appears to be a lot of tribal interest and support and engagement on this, and that OPRD staff has worked to facilitate that with the discussion of this property, but also the adjacent properties that are presently managed by OPRD and part of the larger vision. And so understanding that we seem to have a lot of interest and support from our tribal partners, and that we might have a financial mechanism to get to the finish line, I also support this. I'm tempted to make the motion that we approve, in fact, if that is not out of order, Chair Allen.
That's fine, Commissioner.
Feel
Durr.
good about that? Okay, I'm going to make the motion that that we approve this purchase as proposed.
Thank you for that. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Hill seconded. Any further discussion, questions, or input from the commission on this? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Lad. Thanks for bringing it to us, and thanks for all the hard work. Please thank all the staff who've been involved in moving this forward. I know it's taken a lot of effort on everyone's part, and we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Will do. Thank you,
Lad.
commissioners.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So I think we're moving on to 6, community engagement. 6A is the Community Opportunity Grant Program with Daniel. Actually, Daniel.
Hello, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, members of the Commission, Daniel Killam, Deputy Director for Business Administration at OPRD. I am here for an action from you all on item 6A, which is the County Opportunity Grant Program. This is our 2023 cycle. The brief kind of outlines where that money comes from, but just to restate that, it's funded as a portion of the recreational vehicle licensing fees. The program provides grants for projects in the counties based on acquisition, development, rehabilitation, and planning. All Oregon counties are eligible, but they must provide a 25 or a 50% match depending on the population of the county. So for fiscal year 2023, we had 1,486,654 available. We had 6 projects that were submitted. All were approved. Those totaled $1,373,629. For the biennium, we also for fiscal year 2022 awarded through your action $461,000 last year. So I come to you today seeking your approval for those 6 projects that were submitted and approved by the County Opportunity Grant Advisory Board, and am here to answer any questions that you might have. We will have a few thousand to carry over for fiscal year 2024, but very little. So that's great that we've been able to utilize that funding. It's one of the best years we've had for quite some time.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. And I'll just say, I always appreciate the maps that show where things are distributed across the state. So it's a nice distribution. All good projects. Any questions or comments from the commission for Daniel on this? All right. Will someone make an motion?
Move approval, and congratulations on getting them all funded.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
The team does great work.
Any further discussion? And if not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you for that, Daniel.
Great. Thank you, commissioners.
Great. So we're moving on to 6B, reservation system procurement with Frank Smith. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, commissioners. I'm here today to seek an action for approval for Amendment 3 to a previous contract that extends our human-centered design and accessibility consultants for the Outdoor Recreation Solution Project. The amendment increases our expenditure with the company not to exceed $849,000 and continues our focus on user experience, user interface, and accessibility as we seek a new vendor for our outdoor recreation solution. Most of the information is in the brief, and I believe also the amendment was attached. I could talk about this for hours, and obviously it's part of our agenda. But that's probably not very prudent. but I would happy to take any questions or comments.
Great, thank you, Frank. Do we have questions or comments or other input from the commission?
Chair Allen, if I may, no questions, just appreciation for great to see this project getting back ramped up. I know so much time and energy had gone into setting it up, so it's, I guess, really fortunate too that the service provider and everyone is still there, and you're more or less able to just kind of pick things back up, because as we know, a lot changed in the last few years, and what firms are still around and available and able to do it across a variety of services. So I think it's really great that we'll be able to more or less pick up where we were and keep things moving along, and clearly guests are still coming to the park in droves as we're hitting all these like historic highs. And so being able to help modernize all of our systems, I know will be so great for staff and guests and everyone. So yeah, really just happy to see that this is continuing to go forward. So yeah, thanks for the update and continued work on this.
And just a little update, I'll let everybody know we are actually out with RFP, and just today released our amended RFP and answered all of the questions from all the vendors that we had. So it was really nice to see. We actually had 83 questions come from our vendor forum. So there's some definite interest out there.
That's great. Thank you.
And I just want to thank Frank too, because you all know the last couple of years were really hard, and he was one of the individuals that was impacted by our layoff crazy rotations, and he went off and did great things and was willing to come back home and pick it up and make it even better than where he had left it. So just a lot of appreciation for the wild ride that he's been on, and it's nice to have him back home and get this thing off the ground.
Thank you, Director Sumption. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much from all of us for that. Are there no more questions on this? I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll move approval of amendment to OPRD contract 8504.
Great, thanks. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you again, Frank, for the hard work moving this forward, and excellent work all along the way. So thanks for that.
Thanks, commissioners. I very much appreciate it.
All right, great. And I think we're moving on to Heritage with actual Ian Johnson.
Yes, actual Ian Johnson's. So thank you very much. Sorry for the confusion earlier. I got sent the wrong link. I'm like, well, this should work, and well, it doesn't. So sorry, Daniel, about that, about the issue there. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good morning, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, and members of the Oregon Parks and Recreation Committee. Again, my name is Ian Johnson. I'm the Associate Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, and I'm here on behalf of Chrissy Curran. She's Deputy Director and Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, presenting Agenda Item 7A, the Heritage Division Update. So our current update is kind of a summary of what we accomplished last year. I'll give a few quick highlights. I would emphasize that our work plan is really guided by our 2018-2023 Oregon Historic Preservation Plan and our Oregon Heritage Plan. And if you'd like to see those, they're both available on our agency website. So last year, we continued to work with tribes and our federal and state partners to document historic properties and review development projects and develop agreement documents under all the applicable laws. We also listed 16 properties in the National Register. Those included the historic Rex Theater and Dallas Cinema, which are notable because they also received a federal pass-through grant that our office applied for with the National Park Service. We also listed OPRD Sarah Helmick State Park and several properties associated with the Oregon's African American community, among many others across the state. A lot of those you received updates on regularly last year. The Oregon Main Street program continued to grow, and we piloted a new rural regional Main Street structure with the Tri-County Oregon Frontier Chamber of Commerce. And that allows very small communities in rural Oregon to connect with the Main Street, those communities that may not otherwise have the staff to do it independently on their own. We also published important studies that demonstrate the impact of investment in cultural resources, one of which is the Oregon Main Street Impact Report, What's Up in Downtown. It talks about using upper stories in downtown districts. We also produced the Economic Impacts and Value of Oregon's Heritage Organizations, and that also came with an events and communications tool. As part of a larger effort to push the digitization of important information, we promoted the use of Northwest Digital Heritage. If you haven't gotten on there, I would encourage you to do so. It's a site where museums and archives can put information, archival records. We worked on launching a new interface to increase the search results related to Northwest history. And topics that we've been working with include the Vanport flood, women's suffrage, Japanese American oral histories, and much more. Overall, we awarded almost over $5 million through our various grant programs, a lot of that through Main Street, and the brief includes some specific numbers there on those grant programs. 2 Oregon projects recognized nationally. That includes the Oregon Chinese Diaspora Project, which was a American Association for State and Local History Leadership and Award winner. And also the Salem Historic Landmark Commission received a National Alliance of Preservation Commitments Award for Best Practices Protection. And that's near and dear to my heart because I spent several years on that committee, including as chair. So that was exciting to see. The brief also provides a more comprehensive list, as I said, of our work in 2022, including more specific program numbers. As you're all aware, on December 7th, 2023, the Park Service did list the Eastmoreland Historic District in the National Register, ending a contentious multi-year process that included revising the state program rule for the federal program and changes to agency policy and practice. The upside being of that process, I believe we have a significantly strengthened program and improved transparency administration of that program. Also in December, the office completed the formal public outreach for the next historic preservation plan. The agency coordinated an online survey, held online public meetings, and met with partners. We're in the process of digesting that feedback and will provide a draft document for public comment in June with the intent of publishing the plan in late 2023. We also just began the outreach for the next heritage plan, and we've started this process by talking to our partners, and we'll be expanding that effort. Finally, I want to encourage everyone to participate in the 2023 Oregon Heritage Summit. It'll be virtual, held April 27th through 28th this year. The year's theme is, quote, investing in your volunteers, engage, sustain, value. Volunteers, of course, play a very incredibly important role in the state's heritage organizations, and many are operated primarily by volunteers. The conference will host a facilitated conversation around community engagement and how this impacts volunteer strategies. There'll be panel discussions with volunteer managers and volunteers, and there'll be a practical workshop as well. That is the end of the heritage brief, and I'll take any questions. I did see my internet connection decided just to be a little weird there. So if if I need to go back over anything,
You
I can go
stayed
ahead
perfect, Ian. Nicely done.
Oh, okay. Perfect. All right. Well, you never know. I started getting flashing warnings, and you never know actually what's communicating over. So
Great. Thank you so much, Ian. And I have to say, I was a cultural history major as an undergrad, and I've always loved all of your updates. And I just also want to commend you on the communications you do and also the outreach to smaller communities. That's always so central to, I think, all the work you do and your presentations. And I just really want to celebrate that because it's really impressive and incredibly important for our state. So any questions or comments or input from the commission for Ian? Commissioner Berger.
Madam Chair, speaking for Salem, Ian, thank you for your work. And this award, really, you're central to it, the Salem Award. Thank you.
Yeah, to that point, I had a meeting with the mayor 2 weeks ago, and he's like, "Oh, you get to work with Ian Johnson." I was like, "Yep, I do."
The actual Ian Johnson?
yes.
Not the actual Daniel one, the actual Ian Johnson.
Well, let me be clear. I was on the commission and the chair many years ago. When I became management, I resigned. So
You left an impression.
I know you're on speed dial for a lot of people. So one of the folks in my current Army Corps of Engineers leadership cohort says, Tracy Schwartz, that she has you on speed dial for all of her questions. So you're a resource, even what we formally hear about.
yeah, we talk frequently. Well, I'll take your comments back to the group, and thank you very much for the compliments for our outreach team. They work very, very hard. So I'll especially take that back to Curry Gill.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Very good.
Thank you, Ian. So I think we're on to 8. 8A is electric vehicle charging pilot project with Joe Nyhouse. But I think she is probably being transmitted from the attendee list to the panelist list by our host at the moment, perhaps.
Yep, the first time didn't take. Let's try it again.
I was gonna say. There
Hi,
she
Joe.
is.
Welcome,
Thank
Joe.
you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yep, great.
Excellent. Is my screen showing up for you?
Not sharing a screen yet.
Don't see it yet. It seems to be a delay for that for some reason.
Give it a second.
And I think Chris had to help the last time.
Yeah, Zoom's been weird all morning.
Yeah.
It's not working for you, then is it the document that's in the commission brief folder?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll let Chris share, but it hasn't been letting everyone else. It's not playing nice today.
I won't take it personally then.
It's not.
I haven't come through. I don't know if the rest of them. There it is.
There you go.
There should be a PowerPoint in the folder.
Oh, oops. Hold on a second.
If not, I can try this one more time.
And network is being super slow because I need something to happen right now. Okay. Yep, I got it.
My Zoom. Oh, there you go. Okay, we can see.
There we go.
Okay. Excellent. Well, good morning, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, and members of the Commission. My name is Joe Niehaus with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department in the Government Relations and Policy Unit. I'm presenting the agenda item 8A, project update on electric vehicle charging station project. Next slide, please. Last April, when I first introduced this pilot project to you all, we hadn't even finalized the sites yet. So today I'm very excited to share that we have 7 out of our 8 pilot project sites that are live and running. This photo is from William M. Tugman State Park, south of Reedsport, and this is the first location to finish and launch, and they were shortly followed by the others. Next slide, please. As you all know, this was not a solo project. We were fortunate to have almost all of this project paid entirely by donations, and the public charging itself will be subsidized by donations as well, and likely until and likely through 2025 as part of the pilot project. Next. While we recognize that we're essentially starting from the ground floor, we're hoping to learn a lot from this project. Our goals include environmental impacts, widening the depth and breadth of park users that include people who have older models or used electric vehicles that don't have the range that some of the newer models do today, prioritizing recreation and promoting day use, and then engaging in partnerships that help advance the agency. Next. This photo is from the Banks Vernonia Trailhead parking lot back when we were first doing our site tours. So to recap how far we've come on this project, let's go back 2 years. In 2021, it seems strange to go back 2 years and say 2021. House Bill 2290 was enrolled to require OPRD to plan for public electric vehicle charging and to create a fund to carry out the plan. So that included seeking donations and grants. So later that fall and winter, partners reached out to us and we went out together to scout potential pilot project sites. Next. Oh, and then one more. Thank you. Next slide. We toured 17 site locations, and from there we finalized to the 8 that we have today. Next slide. You'll see in the background there, that's an example of some of the engineering and design plans. It was my first introduction into some of these very complicated engineering plans, and it was a very cool experience and a real insight into an amazing number of people involved. Next. Next. And next. So last spring, the partnership was made official and options for electric vehicle charging exploration were presented to the commission. And then in May, our project publicly was announced, and then work on the design, planning, and engineering began. Next. And through that time, we were able to cover payments secured through Adopt a Charger and NTEC Polymers. Next. This was a photo from the construction over at Silver Falls right when it first started. Construction was actually pretty quick. Once they broke ground, it only took about 2 weeks to get everything finished. So next. Over the summer, teams from Rivian and OPRD began to work on the design and planning details. For us, that included looking in depth into considerations with cultural, archaeology, natural resources, historic engineering, planning, forestry, real estate, and with ADA sources as well. Next. The permitting work began with Rivian and their subcontractors. Next. And we also learned that there were some challenges with land ownership and other management agencies with federal NEPA permits and other local planning permits. Next. And for 7 out of the 8 sites, the construction began in December. Next. And this is a charging station photo from Cape Lookout. January 2023, just a month ago, most installations have been complete and staff trainings were held. The last site that we haven't quite finished yet is the Rooster Rock State Park site. They're currently in the permitting stage because of the National Scenic Area requirements. It is a little bit more complicated than some of the other sites. Next. And one more. So looking forward, we'll be reviewing. There will be a spring celebration. We'll also be working to get our stations registered and reporting for clean fuels credits with the state DEQ. And then we will see what we learn in that project, pilot project timeline. So the 8 sites that I mentioned are all here: Silver Falls, Banks, Step Stewart, Rooster Rock, Cape Lookout, William M. Tugman, Prineville, and the Cove. And in total, we have 21 charging stations. This photo is from the South Falls parking lot at Silver Falls. It's a Rivian electric truck. The owner came to charge right after the stations came live, I think within about 10 minutes to ride their mountain bike in the afternoon. It was pretty good timing. Next. And one more. Yep. So the process itself is actually quite simple. At this point, drivers can come to the park and they can find their parking spot. Hopefully there's a parking stall open for them. They'll pull up, and if it is a day use paid parking site, they need to have their pass visible, and then they can just plug in and start charging. These level 2 charging stations are what are known as dumb chargers. So there's no app associated with it yet, no payment process associated during the pilot project timeline. And eventually the cost will shift to the user after the pilot project is over. But since we have the donation subsidized charging until 2025, we're really hoping that this opens up access and we'll be able to get a lot of information and input from the public. Next. This is a photo of the parallel parking charging at the Cove Palisades. So we just like to throw our users a little bit of a challenge here, but a lot of these cars can also parallel park for you. We do have some concerns about what some of these other parking challenges could include. Some of these sites are boat parking as well, so that there could be some issues with trailering. Our staff are making sure that they're taking note of a lot of the challenges that we see, and if they can be mitigated around that in the future, or if these are really kind of non-issues and parking will assume as normal. Next. But so far, we have already started learning some lessons that the permitting processes can be complex, the infrastructure upgrades are absolutely necessary, and that when parking lots get busy, we'll see how the summer goes and crowded, they'll need some more clarity for the charging spots and eventually more ADA accommodations. A lot of our, all of our spots right now, with the exception of these parallel spots, have access aisles on both sides of at least one charging station stall. However, we don't have formal requirements from the federal and state ADA electric vehicle charging spots yet. So we are waiting for those to come down and making sure that once they come, we're able to accommodate those. Next, and this is a great crew photo from Silver Falls. We did lots of training with the individual crews. Next. There was also an internal policy work group with lots of field and operations representation, and we came up with a guidance that was shared not only with the field staff at the parks themselves, but also with their info center. And we are really prioritizing on engaging with the public to promote education and to get feedback. So we don't want to add more to the field staff plate, but provide as much central support as we can and try to make sure that we are able to grow and learn with the audience that we're serving as well. Next. And one more. So as we look to the future, we have the ongoing pilot project to learn from, but we'll also be looking at things like overnight camping, charging, whether that's more appropriate for level 1 or level 2, fleet charging. We will have more electric vehicles in our fleet, and they will need charging as well. Potentially adding additional day use or visitor centers and working with our engineers and planners for our master plans. And then in the more short term, we are hoping to have a collaborative spring celebration and ribbon cutting, probably over at Silver Falls. And one more. And we definitely want to finish Rooster Rock State Park. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Great, thanks, Joe. I have a few questions, but does anybody, other folks have questions? Meeting host has questions. Actual meeting host, Chris? Actually, Chris?
Yeah. Chair Ellen, Director Assumption, Chris with the Chris Havel with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I just wanted to take a minute to thank Katie and the entire crew that took this from like not even ground zero, but whatever is like right below that, from bedrock all the way up to implementation. It's the beginning of a long process for us, both to learn how to do it and to do it well in a way that serves both the interests of the park system and, more importantly, the public that we're supposed to be serving. This was not simple, and it involved a lot of Aikido along the way, and was going to continue to require that sort of very flexible skill set that we've come to expect from Joe and the rest of the crew. So I just wanted to give that shout out before we move on to your questions.
Great, yes, thanks. Thanks to everyone. Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I'm wondering, have you gotten much feedback from the actual users? And also, is there a way to document how much usage is happening throughout the season for each park as it's opened?
Yeah, Commissioner Hill, thank you for that question. It's it's so intricately linked to the technology that there are a variety of ways to get to the data itself. I personally have more.
Uh-oh.
I think we lost your
I think we lost your audio, Joe. I thought maybe it was just Ian's internet, but
back.
There you are.
Okay, I'm back. I'll start over. Thank you, Commissioner Hill, for that question. Yes, we have ways to access that data, and we will have to. We are going to report monthly on each site and how much of the kilowatt hours that the parks are paying for out of their electric bill will be coming from the chargers themselves. And we need that not just to pay their bill, but also to make sure that we can register and file for our clean fuels credits with the state. So we have those necessary requirements. And also because I'm a data geek myself and would love to see the fluctuations in the popular use and when and where maybe some sites are more popular and some aren't. So that'll be very interesting to see that. And I'd be happy to report those back to you all at some point.
Thanks. I'd love to see it. Sorry, I've got a crying baby in the background.
So I've been living adventures in the electric vehicle ownership recently, which if we were getting together for a meal with adult beverages, I'd tell you all about, but I'm not going to do it right now. So I just have a couple questions. Like, is there a limit because of like people coming to recreate? Is there a time limit that are on these? I'm just sort of curious about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair Allen. It's we debated on this back and forth for a while. Unfortunately, it would be sort of additional burden for the field staff to have to continue to monitor that, and without technological access to go in and control, we don't have that at the moment. However, once we're able to move the payment off the donation to the users directly, we can continue to charge people at a higher rate if they are there for a longer amount of time or if their cars have finished charging. So really we're relying on the etiquette of the electric vehicle users themselves to kind of self-monitor themselves and be able to make sure that this is a sort of a karmic way to utilize this new amenity.
Great, thanks. And then my other question is also, so the technical support is provided by Rivian, is that right? So like if someone gets to a charger and they have an issue, because this goes back to your comment about staff burdening staff, like who needs to troubleshoot it if someone gets to a charger and it's not actually working? Do they go to Rivian, I would hope?
Yes, absolutely. There's 1-800 numbers on the charging stations themselves. In the event that the charging stations are located in an area where certain carriers don't have service and others do, our field staff is ready to step in and help make those connections and those calls, but they are by no means burdened to be the charging station engineers on the spot. Similar to if you were to drive up to like a shopping mall or a rest area where you see some of those large charging station ports, you wouldn't go up to the grocery store attendant to help fix the charging station for you. On top of the technological backup that we have with Rivian, we also have a 10-year maintenance agreement with them. Hopefully our charging stations last the 10 years, but what we're likely predicting is that the technology will be pretty far advanced within the 10 years that we'll probably be replacing these units with something more up to date within that time frame.
Great, thank you. This is exciting. I will echo everybody else's comment about that. It's really exciting to see it and so fast. I mean, I remember when we were hearing about it in April, and then to see so many already in place is really impressive. So any other comments, input, questions for Joe? I look forward to using one of these charging stations sometime soon. If I can ever get my EV back, never mind. We're not going to go into it.
Thank you so much for everybody's time. And I would really just like to use this opportunity to thank all of the people that have been involved. We really got to work with almost every aspect of the agency, from communications to planning, archaeology, and all the field staff. And there's so many more that I am not naming. And it was truly a collaborative effort, both internally and externally. And we're excited to see where these new partnerships take us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joe. I think we'll see you back shortly. So I think we're moving on to 8B, Smith Rock Pedestrian Bridge construction. Do people need to take a collective break at this point? We're almost at noon, so it's been a couple hours, or should we keep powering through? Thumbs up for power through. Thumbs up for, I see, okay, a couple power throughs. All right, so we're going to power through. So we'll be inviting Tracy Johnson to talk to us about the Smith Rock Pedestrian Bridge construction. Lisa, you're on.
Matt's got this one, sorry.
Matt, sorry. I see you there, Matt.
That's okay. Good morning, Chair Allen, Director Sumption, members of the commission. For the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here on behalf of Tracy Johnson, the project manager who is in charge of this project. Unfortunately, Tracy is without power, I think like folks kind of across the state with some of the winter storms that we're seeing. And I'm going to attempt to bring up a slideshow. If it doesn't work, I think we'll be fine without it, but I'm going to try and bring it up. Can you see that okay? Great.
We can.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I'm here today seeking approval for the replacement of the pedestrian bridge at Smith Rock State Park. It's agenda item 8B. A brief description of the project. Essentially, this is just a complete replacement of the pedestrian bridge there at Smith Rock. The existing bridge was built in the 70s. It was modified in the 90s due to some high flows and flood issues along the river there. So this will remove that bridge, do some upgrades to the existing abutments so that they can handle the new bridge that will be built. The new bridge is going to be a little bit wider to accommodate the amount of use that frankly we see at Smith Rock. It'll create easier access across the bridge. The other reason for widening the bridge is so that it accommodates emergency access a little bit easier too. Given the nature of some of the use at Smith Rock, there's often the case that we need to have folks come in and rescue some of the climbers and things like that due to incidents. So this will address those issues as well. And then once the bridge is replaced, there'll be site restoration, plantings, and things like that. This is a little bit better view of the project area. If you're familiar with Smith Rock State Park, it's the only pedestrian bridge that we have across the river there. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor there, but that's the bridge that will be replaced. Again, here is some of the site development designs that are in progress right now, just to give you a sense of what that bridge will look like. The total construction costs we're anticipating $1.35 million. $950,000 of that will come from Oregon State Parks. The remaining funding will come from a grant through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. We're hoping to get the request for proposals out next month and then start working through the contracting process with notice to proceed coming in May of 23 and start construction as soon as August really is the hope. I think some of the mobilization will start in July, but in terms of the actual bridge replacement, we'll be looking at August and then completion by the end of October. And that is all I have. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Berger.
Yeah, Matt, you're probably not the one to answer this because you're filling in, but you mentioned the emergency access thing. And just looking, I have not been here, so I'm just looking at the maps and I'm saying it wouldn't be much of an emergency vehicle that could get across that bridge and then go down that windy. How much emergency access are we getting here? Because it seems pretty important to me, considering the use of what's going on there. It just seems so important.
Yes, Commissioner Berger, it's a great question. And I think by widening this bridge, and there's also, I don't know if you could see in the design, but there'll be a middle bridge abutment as well that will help support the bridge that currently isn't in the current bridge. So that'll allow a larger vehicle to cross. And while I'm not familiar with the emergency access at Smith Rock, I can tell you from other parks that I've worked in, generally we use, or not we, but search and rescue or some of the local fire departments that come in and do some of that work. They'll use a small, like a UTV side-by-side or those kinds of pieces of equipment for that initial access, get them to an area where there's either an ambulance or a larger vehicle. And I'm assuming that that's the case at Smith Rock, although I've not worked directly there, but that's generally how we do it in other parts of the state for emergencies. Thank you.
I think the more important piece of that, Vicky, is how have we not gotten you over there?
Yeah. Yeah.
I see a road trip coming.
Other questions for Matt or input on this from the commissioners? All right, not seeing any hands up or unmutes coming. I think we are looking for a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Berger, a second from Commissioner Blasher. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. Thank you, Matt.
Yes, thank you very much.
Look
All
forward to
right.
seeing the before and after on our June commission meeting. So Vicky, you
I'm-
better show up in June.
I'm
Fingers
thinking
crossed
we
on
may-
weather and all
We'll
that.
put that on the agenda for sure.
Swing
Thanks
by
so
and
much.
see it.
All right, so I think we're moving on to 9 rulemaking, opening scenic bikeway rulemaking with Joe. Or Clint.
Chair Allen, Director Assumption, and members of the commission. My name is Joni Haas with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. And I'm presenting agenda item 9A, rulemaking on the scenic bikeways rules. Give me 1 second to get the presentation up. Hopefully this time it works.
Woohoo! It's there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This request to open the scenic bikeways rules is from Division 9 that outlines the requirements for the Oregon Recreation Trails, which includes the Oregon Scenic Bikeways. The Scenic Bikeways program was established in 2009 as the first program in the United States with official state designated bike routes with printable maps, GPS cue sheets, and on-road signage to showcase the beautiful scenery in Oregon, along with our state history and local communities along the bike routes. Currently the program is managed by Cycle Oregon. They're a nonprofit, and they are on the second year of a 2-year contract to administer the Scenic Bikeways program. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Clint Culpepper.
All right, good afternoon, Chair Allen, Director Assumption, and members of the commission. My name is Clint Culpepper. I'm from Cycle Oregon, and I'm the program manager administering the Oregon Scenic Bikeways program. And if you all need any background about how this relationship came to be, let me know. Cycle Oregon was one of the partners when the program was initially launched. We are a nonprofit organization that has primarily focused on events. Those events help fund a large grant program that we operate each year, where we help communities develop projects and help fund those projects. So we're now in our second year of the agreement with Oregon State Parks, and looking forward to kind of the next phase as we get rolling on a few things. This Oregon administrative rules change is one of those things.
Thank you, Clint. So overall,
you.
this rulemaking seeks to better serve Oregonians through widening definitions and maximizing participation from a more diverse array of recreationists, and to protect recreation access for differently abled individuals and different types of cyclists. It'll also clarify and streamline the committee's process by clearly defining the group's quorum and process for recommendation designation. At this point in time, we have not convened a rules advisory committee yet. We would like to schedule one for March 13th, and members have been reached out to. Public comments will open from April until about mid-May if we can stay on this schedule. Currently, a public hearing has not been scheduled yet. So at this point in time, the staff would like to request permission to open amendments to OAR 736-009-0020 to 736-009 through 0030, updating the Oregon Scenic Bikeways rules.
Great, thank you, Joe and Clint. Do we have any questions or comments or input for folks on this request to open rulemaking? I don't see any people unmuting or waving their hands. So in that case, we will look for a motion to approve.
Move approval.
I will second.
I second. No, you can have the motion. I'll second.
Okay, fine. Thanks, Jonathan. I will move. I think this is good and this is timely. So I appreciate the work on it and move approval.
Yeah, and I'll second, and it'll be interesting to see how, I know the kind of report talks about seeking changes to increase diversity and participation by adding the at-large seats. But when I read through some of the drafts, I didn't see the ways that like explicitly the rules will call out how you'll address, you know, the recruitment process and engagement. So I trust you all will get through those in the details. But yeah, I support opening this up and looking to make these improvements. So thanks.
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, it passes. And I have to say Cycle Oregon weekend is the highlight of my summers. So I'm always excited to attend and participate in Cycle Oregon events. So, and thank you for joining us, Clint, today and for being a partner in this effort.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to echo that, Clint, thank you. And for those of you who remember during the pandemic, Cycle Oregon was struggling, we were struggling, and this was one of those beautiful born ideas out of that. And it's been going, it's been pedaling along nicely. So Clint, thank you. And I'm excited to see these changes and this partnership to the level that it is at this moment. So thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Great. Well, if you're ready for 9B, Katie, Chair Allen, Director Assumption, members of the Commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 9B. It's the Ocean Shore Vehicle Access. And with me, I have Preston Phillips, our Central Coast District Manager for OPRD, and Monty Demiris from Lincoln County Parks and Recreation. Lincoln City Park and Recreation. So we want to talk with you about a rulemaking request from Lincoln City to look at changes to vehicles access on in Lincoln City. Right now in Lincoln County, there are two places where vehicles can access the ocean shore. Within 150 feet of North 35th Street, there's a little in rule, it says North 35th Court. It's also referred to as Northwest 34th Street, and then North 15th Street. So it's a 300-foot section of the ocean shore, 150 feet of each way of that entry point. The City of Lincoln City has requested that we permanently close vehicle access at 34th Street, and with the exception of emergency vehicles. The city also requested that we review parking on the ocean shore at 15th Street. And this is a photo of the beach at 35th Street. Currently, the city, this is the 35th Court entry point. The city owns the parking lot above the ocean shore access point, and through a resolution has closed that entry point through December of 2023, but would like to have a permanent closure except for emergency vehicles. For 15th Street, that is open but is closed during king tides and special events, and would like to have that evaluated. Before I go further, Preston or Monty, do you have more you would like to add to that piece?
Well, I'll add what little bit I had was that I had requested that Lincoln City go through this process as a result of that they've been closing the upland properties, and we still have the drive on beach. And so it seems like a good need, but it more needed to go through this administrative process and the public review versus just kind of getting closed. Not necessarily knee jerk, but it was, we were showing open beaches and then Lincoln City's closing it. And then there's just some infrastructure issues and definitely hazard issues with both of them, from vehicles on the beach, the pedestrian vehicle interface, and overpopulation at certain times of the year and certain events down there. It really turned into quite a mess. So, and I'll let Monty jump in on that because he manages the upland stuff in these areas too.
So during the King Tides and special events and whatnot, we closed 15th. What we did was we put in some collapsible, removable bollards, so emergency vehicles can still access the area in case of a water emergency or whatever, what have you. We did the same at Northwest 34th there. That barrier is actually removed now, and then there's right now in its place, there's a collapsible bollard, so emergency vehicles can access it, but public vehicles can't at this time. But yeah, so we've just, during special events, that just from speaking to the police and the fire department, their concerns were there'll be 300-400 cars down there sometimes, and then it takes, to get them out of the way to access the water, it would be almost impossible. And in a life-saving moment, minutes count. So I think that's mainly their concerns there. I can't speak for them personally. That's just, yeah. So.
And I'll pinball off of what Monty said there too. It only takes one individual not parking right to jam that whole thing up. Then you've got vehicles trapped on the beach. Emergency services can't get down, and again, it's that press of vehicles. And I know the tow companies must make a pretty good bank there too, because we just our last face-to-face meeting out there, somebody drove off and got their Honda stuck almost immediately, and so it's kind of a regular thing. But this is quite a bit more infrastructure invested here in the access, and Lincoln City knows only too well, so it'll still be an access when need be. Like it's what they're asking for, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of public comment when we get to that stage.
Great, thank you. So just to provide a little more clarity about where we're talking about, currently the section below in red is already close to vehicle traffic. This section between these two black lines here would also be close to vehicle traffic for the North 35th Court. And then for the 15th, it's this further south section between these two black lines. The request would be to open rulemaking. We would convene a rule advisory committee to review parking at 15th Street, and that committee would make recommendations to the agency for the direction on the parking at that location. That would include law enforcement, safety folks, people with disabilities, and members of the community on the Rule Advisory Committee. And then based on that recommendation, we would open public comment and have a public hearing on both locations, and then bring that back to you. So the request is to open rulemaking. Are there questions that we can answer?
Yeah, thank you, Katie and team. Any questions, comments, or input from the commission on this? Commissioner Berger.
This is in our packet. It says that in February 2017, we decided not to close vehicle access at 34th. Any insight into, I mean, property owners objected. I would have said off property owners would have not objected. What, do you have any insight as to what that discussion was at the time? Because I certainly don't remember it. And is this similar to the process we went through with up in Tillamook County, or different than the process up in at Cape Kiwanda when we closed access to cars?
So to take your second question first, Commissioner Burr, yes, it's a similar process. We have a request coming from a local government to look at the access and to review access, and then we do the public process to take public comment on that request. So same process, same public comment process for that. So yes, similar process for that piece. The first question about the 2017 process, that one did not come from a local government. It was a request from property. We can take petitions. So there were, if 20 nearby landowners request it, then we would go through that process. So that's what happened in that case. And at that time, the comments were more in favor of keeping it open. And it wasn't, there were some user groups who preferred to have the access point open. And the thought was maybe there would be some improvements to the area, and the idea was that it would be reviewed again, so that this is an opportunity to review it again at that point. And Preston can probably speak more to some of the conversations on the ground as to why they didn't determine.
I think that's sufficient, Katie.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment, if I could, Madam Chair, that this is an ongoing issue as the use gets higher and the tides get bigger and the beaches change and get more dangerous. I appreciate that we're on the hook on a process, but I hope we'll always be working very proactively on these things with our local partners, because the beaches, everybody thinks they own them. And yet here we are trying to manage them, and this is fraught on many levels. So I'm interested in this process. I believe that we had a good process up there at Cape Kiwanda. It has worked stunningly well. I hope we can duplicate the process here in such a way that people feel like they're heard, and that we can work through some ways to kind of meet a number of conflicting needs. And if we can't, then we do the safe and right thing for the sake of public safety, beach access and use, and all the various issues that come charging down here and collide in these kinds of issues. Thank you, Katie. Thanks for your work. I'll certainly support this motion.
Thanks, Commissioner Berger, Commissioner Blasher, and then AAG Shipsey.
Thanks. And I support, this motion or second if needed to open rulemaking. I think my comment is kind of to Commissioner Berger's of just being reminded of, like, how is this process similar or different to recent processes? And I guess maybe there's an opportunity to do a work session for the commission, just to be reminded of, here's the stretch of these different spots where people can drive or can't drive, because maybe this will come up more. I think in my almost 8 years on this commission, I think this may be only the second or third one, but it's come up here pretty recently from what we had before. So mostly just a comments for appreciation of working through this, and might be helpful to have some of that reminders of the bigger context of where there are or are not these types of opportunities, because for a lot of folks, this is a historic legacy that they've had for, a generation or two, and things are changing and shifting. And when there's that change and shift, a lot of different feelings and emotions come up when we're looking at a lot of these things. And as commissioners that aren't on the coast, we don't get all the different calls. And so we make some decisions from here in the Valley or east of the Cascades. And so we just have to I think it's helpful to be mindful and make sure that as a commission, we've got kind of the context of the different things that are happening along the shores and on the beaches, so that we can help be, just think through all of the different complexities and support staff through the process and community members through this and our local partners and jurisdictions with all of it. So thanks for the updates.
Thank you,
Mr.
Commissioner.
Blasher. I think that's a great idea because there are some uniquenesses with that statute too. So we could look at a work session.
Yeah, thank you to both of those commissioner comments. Steve.
Yeah, it's just a kind of a technical point, but putting on the record that we're doing this, it's a request, but the commission is opening this rulemaking, and this isn't a petition for rulemaking from the county or the city that would put us under different timelines into the Administrative Procedures Act, but this is a commission initiated action to open rulemaking.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Doer.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments from my fellow commissioners on this. I thought I needed to chime in just as the coastal representative to some extent and just to express my appreciation that the other commissioners are also thinking about the nuances here and not wanting to sort of impose an outside perspective on this. I do think that even within individual coastal communities, there are different perspectives on what is appropriate and what is traditional and what is acceptable now and into the future in terms of modes of access. And this is yet another example of these, a place where we have certain kinds of, if not competing uses, at least competing modes of access that in some places along the coast become, well, in some places along the coast can continue for a very long period of time without a sense of direct conflict. And in other places, as populations increase and so on, those conflicts are felt maybe a little more acutely. And so I appreciate the caution here. And it is, I think, the level of public engagement I see built into the plan rulemaking process that really adds to my level of comfort with it, because we really do need to engage the community and hear the voices of the people who are affected by the rule changes, no matter what side of the issue they might be on, and earnestly listen to those perspectives and build it into our thinking and the rulemaking process as we go. So anyway, I appreciate everybody's caution on that. And speaking as the West of the Coast Range Commissioner, just appreciate that perspective coming from my fellow commissioners from places maybe a little more distant. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Doer. Do we have any other comments, questions, or input from the commission on this?
Madam Chair, you can take my first remarks as a motion to proceed with rulemaking.
Great. And I think Commissioner Blasher said that he'd be happy to second the motion had it been made. So I can just we'll take that onto the record as well. All right. So any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, it passes. And again, I'll add my thanks to the staff and everyone working on this important processes and challenging circumstances. So I just really want to express my appreciation to everyone who's working on this.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. Yeah, thanks, Katie and team. So I think we're on to reports. I'm not sure that were any of the reports one we were going to speak to specifically on the agenda, or it was just for information. So if you do have questions about those, I guess follow up with those that put them together. So I think the final thing then is the commission planning calendar, and I believe the next meeting is scheduled for April 12th and 13th. Is there any updates or information about that? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Blasher, is your hand still up? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Just a comment. I think I had asked for a map for procurement, and thank you for staff, and I think it was actually Daniel that put it together. So I really appreciate it, because when I see the list of all the different contracts and amendments and things like that, I'm trying to like place it geographically. So having this map that shows all the different procurements and things, I appreciate that. So appreciate staff's responsiveness on all those little random things that we ask as commissioners that sometimes can seem like extra work, but just appreciate that attention to detail. Thanks.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's actually nice to have that, because it's another way for staff to see it too, right? Because they get so comfortable with how it is. It brings another lens sometimes to be like, oh, either validates what they think they know or they learn something new. It was nice to see how many there are all over.
We have actually Daniel and actually nice. There we go. All right.
It's all actually. And actually, we have a plan for the April commission meeting. I believe we'll be down in the Brookings area. And hopefully there'll be no snow and rain and all that good stuff. So we'll be able to tour and actually be together. And maybe we'll even get to meet and some of us hold baby Clara. Because I think Vicky has been waiting for that moment all week.
So it is the 12th and 13th on the calendar, right? Which is Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, I have two calendars. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two calendars, one 11/12 and one 12.
I have it on the 11th and 12th on mine. That's why I'm asking.
Okay,
On
let
my
me.
calendar, it's the 11th and 12th, and on the other one, it's
And I think this is another thing where I had made a request to possibly that the 11th doesn't work for me personally. And so I think at the last meeting we had said, hey, could folks move it to the 12th or 13th? But I don't think it was. So I think this is the follow-up affirming that. So again, thank you to staff and to this commission for listening to some of my requests. And then last thing I wanted to say was I really appreciated the salmon license plate report, and all of the cool work on that is really fascinating to see. The uptick in this, and just so another piece of the report that I appreciate. And going back to the commission meeting, if we can keep it on the 12th and 13th, that would be great. And I'd love to see folks down in the south coast.
Okay, that'll make Denise breathe, because I'm sure she was just looking at all of us like, are you kidding me? I already started working on it. So yes, we were looking at Wednesday and Thursday. And thank you, Jonathan, for reading the reports. That always makes staff very happy too.
all right.
And then we'll start looking at June. We were thinking, depending on what appointments I sent you guys the email letting you know that we do have a kind of a timeline and schedule now to start looking at expiring appointments, which Jennifer's technically expired in February. Jonathan, I think, is April. So June would kind of be June would be like the last meeting, even if we could get those appointments in. So we may look at maybe trying to be in the Gorge area or somewhere closer to the two of them, so we can celebrate appropriately their 8+ years of service with all of us. And so we'll start looking at ideas. I haven't actually shared that with Jer and Matt yet, so surprise.
Great, thanks. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing everybody anywhere, actually. All right, anything else today from the commission on any fronts? I just want to once again thank all the staff for all the hard work that goes into all the things we've been talking about today, and all the things that we didn't talk about today, and all the great work that people are doing across the state. And thanks for pivoting on the weather. That's a tough call to make, but looking out my window, it was the least the right call for me. I'm stuck at home, but I'd be stuck somewhere else if I weren't stuck at home. So good to see you all. Thank you. If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, which I think I forgot to do last time we were together. So
Jennifer, I just want to thank all of you for that flexibility, because as of yesterday, I was still like, crap, did we make the right call? Should we have called it? And I think Chris got called to grand jury. We've been having people sick. So just kudos to staff and all of you for just pivoting as quickly as you did to keep everything going, and people jumping in. Matt wasn't prepared to present, and look, he all did it. So yay team. So let's adjourn.
I'll move adjournment.
Second.
all right, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
How about you, Carla? All right, great. We are then adjourned. Be safe, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye. See you soon.